right. Good morning. My name is Adriana Mendez, and I'm here today with Christine Sevier. We're going to talk a little bit about senior living and the differences between the levels of senior living and maybe when would be a good time to make that transition and kind of everything in between. Christine is our expert here. She's with Creating New Hope. Christine, I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Thank you, Adriana. Christine Sevier here, Senior Living Advisor with Creating New Hope. So what we do is we take the stress and the anxiety out of making those difficult transitions and really matching like residents with like residents, whether somebody needs a really active, independent living community that has a lot of opportunities for engagements, activities, as well as, a swimming pool. Like if exercise and fitness is important to you, we have identified those specific communities, and then we will help pair you at that point. So let me share my slides here for a moment. And all right, I'm going to share my slides with the group. Do you guys see that?
Everything looks good.
Okay, so independent living tends to be a true unlicensed part of the building. So what does that look like? That looks like an apartment style living with a ton of activities, an emergency call pendant button, caregivers that are working the floor, but you don't necessarily have a care plan. And what's great about the independent living model is there are a ton of opportunities to get out in the community with transportation. So each of these communities will have a bus that you can sign up. And let's say you want to go see a show at the Lesher, or you want to go to the farmer's market, or jump on an excursion. Those are great communities that you can get plugged into that are also attached to assisted living communities, where if you needed an additional support or with your activities of daily living, whether that's dressing or bathing, or maybe you just need minimal support of getting those compression socks on in the morning and medication management, those are great places to start. And there are a ton of them in the Bay Area. And what's great about the assisted living model is it's not a buy-in. So you're not going to have to pay, millions of dollars to buy into this community. You can live in an assisted living community to the end of your days, and it's a month-to-month basis. Prices range anywhere from $4,500 to $6,500. All of your meals are included. Again, medication management, transportation, and a ton of caregivers and a LVN or an RN that's in the building that can help anytime you need assistance with minimal non-medical care. And then what I always tell families, once you can no longer ambulate or advocate for yourself and you're really declining physically and need a lot of standby assistance, someone to help with just about everything that you can think of, what you really want to look into is a smaller residential community. A small residential care home is typically licensed for 6 residents, and there are 2 caregivers around the clock that are attending to each resident's needs. Perfect model for folks that need that standby assistance. However, if you need true memory care, and folks are in that range where maybe they're still active, but they might be an elopement risk. They might have the capability of, still walking, getting around, and might walk out the front door, and that could be dangerous. They can get lost. What you really want to focus on is a really good memory care that has a delayed egress, that has different nooks within the building that have opportunities for stimulation and engagement and reenactment, which is really important. There are some memory care communities that will have a utility bench where the folks, if they maybe were a contractor, they can go and play safely or reenact safely with those tools. There's even a kitchen where folks can go in there and have access to kitchen stuff safely. You're not going to find a sharp knife in a memory care, but you can have a small kitchenette area. And then skilled nursing. I always tell families that Medicare pays for skilled nursing, and that's towards that end clinical need when you have a need for, let's say, a feeding tube, an ostomy bag, or you need some type of intravenous drugs. Medicare is going to pay for that unless you have, let's say, you want to live in a skilled nursing facility and you want to have the feeding tube and all of the interventions. That setting is going to be able to take care of those needs.
And before we move on, I just wanted to, I guess, make a note about all the different levels here. I think what's really a good option, I guess, to think about is when you're talking about the independent at the beginning here is kind of being proactive. I mean, maybe we've talked to people about this every week. You know, they've been living in their 3-4 bedroom home for many years and they just don't want to deal with the maintenance anymore, right? Like they don't want to take care of the yard. They don't want to take care of the leaking roof. And independent is a true, maintenance free option where you still have all the amenities. You know, a lot of folks are still driving in the independent model and they just, want to be around a community of.
Yep, 100%. So here's a great story I have for you. I have a client right now. She's 90 years old. And when I tell you this lady is in the best shape of her life, I mean, she is walking, she is driving, she is super engaged in her community. She's playing mahjong all the time. She can manage her own bills. I mean, incredible shape. I mean, I want to be like her when I'm 90. But she started to notice that people in her community on her court are either passing away, they're moving to assisted living, and that was her support network. So she has no husband, her husband is passed, and she has no children. And she's like, I'm 90. I don't want to end up in a situation where I'm on the floor and nobody finds me. Yeah. Because if you have an emergency call panic button at your own house, and let's say you have a stroke, who's going to check on you unless you already have a plan in place? So I'm seeing a lot of independent, active adults saying, you know what, I need a sense of community and I want to go ahead and pare down my life and have a maintenance-free lifestyle now, and also be in the company of other residents and care just in case something happens.
Yeah, so that peace of mind, I feel like, is everything.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And you know what, I hear far too often. I mean, you check in with folks that are, working for like Meals on Wheels or Open Heart Kitchen. Those folks are constantly, delivering meals weekly and seeing residents decline and not having an emergency situation or help nearby. So and just think about in terms of having a community and not being isolated. I mean, they say isolation is equivalent to smoking 10 cigarettes a day. So just to have folks to talk to will help you live longer.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right. So so here's another independent living apartment. This is like a lot of the independent living apartments will have anywhere from 1 bedroom to 2 bedroom. They're going to have semi kitchenettes. Some communities will have the full oven and the full range for cooking capabilities, but a majority of time, the people that are moving to independent and assisted living communities, they don't want to have to cook. They don't want to have to clean and do all of the shopping and everything like that. And these communities are restaurant style. So I always tell folks, try the food, meet the people. So here's another one. So here's an assisted living community. See, restaurant style dining, simple 1 bedroom, even a studio. I want to say the studios, as long as they're set up great and they have a little alcove, you can have your office space still there and have your apartment and everything that you need. Most of the time in the assisted living models, folks are in the general community. So they're out and about with the residents. And here is a true memory care community. So this is a community that has different little reenactment stations. And these are great, especially in the dementia space when you're still in that tactile phase and you need to be able to engage with your environment and still touch things and reenact. And what I like about memory care communities is they use medication as the last modality of intervention because they want to create an environment that will support you versus have you take too many drugs and just sitting there and not engage in your environment. So that's what I like about true memory care communities. And here is a great residential care home. So I always tell families, you know, if your loved one is further along in the disease process, this is the model that you want to look at. And it's really affordable. You're looking at like $6,500 to $7,000 a month, which is pretty stable. You're not going to see an increase. Hospice services are brought into these licensed care homes, and the ratios are smaller. So, you know, you're going to be attended to 24/7.
And these homes are all over the Bay Area, right? I know that, hidden in all of these residential communities in the Bay Area here, you'll find residential care homes like that.
Yep. So a lot of families, they're like, really want to stay close to their loved ones, whether, you know, they're in Livermore or Lafayette or all over the Bay Area. They're hidden gems. I call them hidden gems throughout the area. So when I work with families and they're seeking this model, I always say, okay, what's your zip code? Where are you at? And then we'll try to find the closest community to their own community where they live. It's a great model. A lot of the care homes are, some are owned and operated by nurses. Mm-hmm. So it's really when you need that standby assistance, or you're a fall risk, or your loved one continues to fall in the assisted living community, this is where you want to be. And then
are the residential care homes also able to care for those who have memory issues? Yes,
they absolutely are. However, if your loved one is an elopement risk and they, you know, are still exit seeking and up and about and, you know, sundowning and up through the night, this is not going to be the model that you're going to want to look to. In fact, some of the administrators, upon assessment, they'll decline residents who are maybe too active for this model, because it's just not a safe environment. They don't have the delayed egress or the major alarms, locking alarms on their doors.
I see. So in between each of like assisted living, the residential care, memory care, is there like, what's the transition, or I guess what's the marker of, okay, maybe this next step would be where you need to move to, or where your loved one would be best fitting? Is it a doctor's appointment? Is it?
So I would say it comes down to preference. You know, some families, they would want to stay in the assisted living communities and then hire a one-to-one once somebody becomes bedridden or no longer able to ambulate. The assisted living models are great because there's a ton of opportunities for engagement. You know, people are coming to socialize, happy hour, different, you know, educational series, a great course lectures, you know, dance groups from different, you know, like tap dancing companies will come and host events here, which is great. But you are also going to pay a premium to have a one-to-one in this setting. So a lot of families that are like, look, mom's been here, she's developed some relationships, I want to keep her in here as long as possible, but she needs that standby assistance. These communities will start to increase their costs in upwards up to $10,000, $13,000.
I see.
So once it becomes unaffordable and, you know, your loved one's in their apartment 24/7 with a one-to-one caregiver, it just doesn't make financial sense at this point.
Got it.
And that's, you know, when you'll want to look at the smaller models. Whereas on the independent side, I always tell families it's never too early to look for true independent living. A lot of families, I think they wait too long to show their loved ones here, and I always tell them, you know what, if your mom and dad still have their wits about them, and the care cost, or, you know, maybe the caregivers that are coming into the home aren't showing up on the weekends or the holidays, or it's just getting too difficult for coverage inside the house, I always tell families, look at this model, bring your loved ones to the community when there's an activity going on or a big function. Get them to buy into this process and have them make the decision on their own. A lot of adult children will kind of delay this process, but I always tell them, look, get your loved ones involved into the process so they have a buy-in, mentally and emotionally in the community that they want to be in. So they don't feel like they're being put somewhere, have them go look at the community. And it's not, look at how active it is. This place has a pool, full kitchenette, great apartment. And I always like to pair families up. So I will call in advance and say, hey, Mr. Joan likes mahjong, or he's super social, or he plays rummy cube. I'll schedule a lunch, and then I'll also say, who's a community ambassador? Let's try to match like residents with like residents and see if, we have somebody that can make this transition very easily and help them develop friendships and relationships.
Yeah, and I think also too, for people who've grown up with past relatives in, having been in, 30, 40 years ago, senior living, it's different now than it was even from when I remember when my grandparents were in senior living. These communities that we're in every week and helping folks move into are beautiful. They're very well thought out. It's not your, your grandfather's senior living. It's definitely supporting a lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I often see folks live a longer and fuller lives when they go in on the independent side, because, they're around other people that are also taking care of themselves, they're staying hydrated, their medication is being managed, and they have a sense of purpose. When you have a sense of purpose in that last half of life, you tend to live a longer, fuller life, versus if you just are home alone, sitting there watching TV 24/7 and meals are delivered to you. So I always encourage families to look at the independent living model, especially if it's a couple. I see a lot of couples where it's like, yeah, my husband needs help, but I don't. Once your husband passes, who's going to be there to support you 24/7? If you've developed relationships in a community like this, you're going to have a gang of ladies that are going to have gone through the same thing that you've gone through, and to walk with you through that grief. And that is so important. I think that is overlooked. And families that have made the transition for mom and dad to move into communities like this, they are super grateful after the fact when the other one loved one passes, because there is that support network around them.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, on the last slide here, the skilled nursing side, it's going to be more of a clinical setting. There's a physician in here and, PT, OT happening here. But this is also when you have an acute care need. So anything intravenous, or you need physical therapy. And typically, if you have a fall or medical intervention that is required, Medicare is going to pay for this skilled nursing setting up to 120 days or so. If you had to pay privately, you're paying upwards of $14,000 plus a month.
Yikes.
So it can get pretty costly to stay in this model. And skilled nursing facilities, they're primarily shared rooms with a curtain in the middle. There's about zero privacy. So it's not necessarily a need if you don't have, ostomy bag or a trach or a feeding tube. What's going to be included in all of the independent and assisted living communities is your rent, utilities, dining, housekeeping, activities, transportation, and laundry services. So it's a true maintenance-free lifestyle. I often tell families, moving into independent and assisted living facilities, it's like going on a cruise on land, because everything is right there. Yep. Entertainment, everything is brought to you. So it's a really nice way to live out your last half of life and not have to worry about a roof leak or, mold in the kitchen. I have a lady right now who, she's thinking about converting her entire bathroom, going to pay $60,000 plus to convert her bathroom, because maybe her husband is going to be getting some hip surgery and might need it. And I'm like, I can find you a place right now that will have an ADA bathroom for your husband, and you'll have care and someone to help you. So we're exploring that option now. Each community, they're going to range in what they charge for care. So I'm seeing right now in the Bay Area, level 1 care starting anywhere from $900 to $1,200 a month. And that's going to include medication management, bathing, minimal assistance, anytime you need hands-on care. However, I will say that there are true independent living communities that have an a la carte financial feature. So let's say somebody's completely independent, but they just need help putting on those compression socks, or they just need help. Maybe they have arthritis pretty bad and they just can't open up their medication bottles or pop the pill packs. You can just have a medication plan, or you can just have like one little a la carte item of help put on the compression socks, or, just help with showering, minimal assistance, which is a really great feature in a lot of the independent living communities.
And all of these are in addition to the monthly fee, right?
Yes. Yeah. So you're going to have your base rate that's going to include all of the rent, utilities, dining, housekeeping, activities, transportation, and laundry. That's like everything that's included. And if you consider what rent costs in the Bay Area,
Yeah.
and we have to pay for food and electricity and cable, and transportation and your insurance for your car, I mean, you can easily go into independent living at like $4,700 a month. And if you're going to move into one of these independent living communities and share a room, like let's say you go to a 1-bedroom, they'll charge a second person fee. So an additional maybe $900 to $1,200 for the second person in that apartment, which will also cover, their laundry, their meals, transportation, which is great. And you don't have to pay for transportation at these communities. You're going down to the front desk, signing a little book. Hey, I would like to go to this place. And typically these communities will have a range of where they're going to go. Primarily, they're all going to Kaiser, John Muir, any medical appointments, and then local shopping, and then to the excursions. If you needed someone to take you to, a specialist at Stanford, you would pay an additional cost for that. Let's see, what else can we go over? So different communities will have different care pricing models. Some are going to charge that a la carte model. Some are going to charge based on a level of care, and that goes from 1 to 6. And for those people that, let's say somebody that has Parkinson's that wants to stay at their assisted living community, but they just need help ambulating and they can still communicate. You'd pay an additional maybe $1,700-1,800 if somebody needed to escort you to and from the dining room, or needed to help dress you every morning, manage your medication, change you. You can expect to pay about that.
And I know you've said it a few times, but in case anyone who doesn't know what ambulating means, can you explain that to us?
Oh, walking, sitting, moving around. Yeah. However whether it's a walker or a wheelchair, someone to help you. And a lot of these communities will also, as long as you can demonstrate you can use it safely, they will allow the electric scooters. So if you just need help getting dressed in the morning and hopping on that electric scooter and you'll bebop around the community, not a problem. Let's see. I always tell families, my recommendations are, don't start the process early. Don't wait for the crisis. If you know your folks are slowing down, start having that conversation early. And identifying a few communities that they may like. Involve the prospective resident as much as possible. Don't be overly sold on the attractiveness of the facility. If you know your loved one has, some expensive medical conditions that will be taxing financially, I'm always telling families, go mid-range. Let's stay mid-range. Don't let the fancy chandelier fool you, because if your loved one is going to need full assistance, hands-on care for, let's say, a Parkinson's or a dementia diagnosis, those can be very expensive conditions to have. Check the licensing records. So I always tell families, great. Check the licensing records to determine if they have a history of bed sores, personal rights violations, or if the community has been, cited for any crazy infraction. Narrow down the options and, zero in on about 2 or 3 communities. Go back, try some meals, meet the people, see who's there in that community, and meet the executive director. A lot of families don't understand that your executive director is going to be the end all be all. Obtain a copy of that admission agreement and make sure. So some communities, especially the independent and assisted living communities, they may or may not have the capability of a 2-person transfer. So if you know what, it's really important to make sure that each community can meet your current and future physical care needs. And what I'm looking for, especially when you're working with me as senior living advisor, I'm looking for, does that community use a Hoyer lift, or can they do a 2-person transfer? Because let's say if you have Parkinson's, or let's say you're just a really big guy and your dad's 6'4", 220, and had a hip replacement. It's going to be a little difficult to ambulate him. So let's make sure that each community can meet that physical requirement. So if folks want to get in touch with me, creatingnewhope.org, we're a complimentary referral service. We will, just much like a realtor, we will go and pick up residents and take them on tours, and it's 100% free. We charge the community a referral fee, and we're doing all the heavy legwork for you, even for those adult children who are like, my parents aren't necessarily ready. It's great to bring me into the conversation early, so at least we can talk about, what does it look like if you do decide to stay home. Let's map out a care plan. What would that look like? What would it cost? And once we start getting into the nuts and bolts of what would it cost to stay home, $25,000, $30,000 a month, a lot of families are like, whoa, does it make sense to invest in adapting the house? Should we sell and just downsize now?
Yeah. Yeah, again, I think it's great to have these conversations and being proactive about, looking down the road before that crisis happened, and when there's still options, and when an individual can still be in control of what happens to themselves and their belonging, just so that transition can be a little easier and more comfortable. Because that's, I think, the thing that all of us want to remain as much as our own control, and having our own choices, and just maintaining that dignity for ourselves is really important to everyone.
Absolutely.
Well, Christine, thank you so much for your time today. I think you had excellent information. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out to either one of us. I'm going to share the contact information below this video, and thank you for joining us today.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye, Christine.